Pastor Julian here with Central's devotion for today. I hope you're doing well. I don't know if you can tell from this video, but I got a tan. I'm all tanned up. I've been out in the sun. I was out of town. Even went to the beach a little bit. But I got some sun. I might say that it's my Italian genes that I get tanned up. But some people, no matter how hard they try, they can't get a tan. They might just burn. And then there are other people who really tan up. I remember I had this one student that I'll just say who it is. Some of you might know him, Colin Wirtz. I remember he used to come back from vacation, and man, he was so dark. I could not get as tan as him. And I would joke around with him. I would say, have you been in the presence of God? Because your face is shining and radiant. It's just so tan. And where does that come from? There's an actual story in the Bible in Exodus chapter 34, verses 29 to 34, where Moses, he returns back to Mount Sinai for a second time to get a second set of tablets made with God. Because the first time he had the 10 Commandments on these tablets, he came down and there was the golden calf and the people were singing and everything, and he threw them down and they shattered and broke everywhere. And so he went back to get a fresh set of tablets made up with the 10 Commandments on them. And so he went back to Mount Sinai, and the Lord said, I just want you here, and that's it. And so Moses went, and he followed God's command, and the Lord was with him. The Lord wasn't with him to the point where he saw God's full glory, because he wouldn't have lived. But Moses was in the presence of God, and he was there for 40 days and 40 nights. Sounds similar, like Jesus when he fasted in the wilderness. But Moses was there for 40 days and 40 nights, fasting, no bread, and no water, no nothing to drink. But he survived. God took care of him, and he got the new tablets. And God also shared some very specific things that he wanted Moses to convey to the Israelites as part of a covenant that he made with Moses. Okay, so when Moses comes down from the mountain, you would expect that he would be gaunt and emaciated, but we're gonna read what happens here when he returns back from this journey to be with God to get these tablets. Verse 29, this is again Exodus 34, 29 to 35. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands, he was not aware that his face was radiant, because he had spoken with the Lord. Now, just so you know, radiant is also translated as shone. He didn't realize that his face shone, okay? Because he had spoken to the Lord. When Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, his face was radiant. They were afraid to come near him, but Moses called to them. So Aaron and all the leaders of the community came back to him and spoke to them. Afterward, all the Israelites came near to him, and he gave them all the commands the Lord had given him on Mount Sinai. When Moses finished speaking to them, he put a veil over his face. But whenever he entered the Lord's presence to speak with him, he removed the veil until he came out. And when he came out and told the Israelites that what he had been commanded, they saw that his face was radiant. Then Moses would put the veil back over his face until he went in to speak with the Lord. So Moses' face shone. Moses' face was radiant. What's interesting here is when it says that Moses' face shone, in Hebrew, this word translated means that he had beams like shooting from his face. That's where you might hear someone was beaming. That Moses' face was literally beaming after he had been in the presence of God and the glory of God, and that glory was beaming from Moses' face. Unfortunately, the Latin Vulgate, when that was translated into Latin, it was translated as horn, because the Hebrew could also be translated as horns. And so when you see some of these medieval sculptures of Moses, you might notice that Moses has a set of horns on his head. It's not because Moses has horns, but he has horns on his head in those sculptures because of an unfortunate translation. He should have beams or radiance shooting from his face, not horns on his head. But Moses came down from Sinai, and his face was beaming, so that Aaron and the leaders of the community, they were afraid to be in his presence, to look upon him, and to come near him. And I just thinking about this, it was just when you have encountered God, and you truly have been in God's presence for a while, you're different. And sometimes people are afraid to be around you. You might appear different. Moses' physical attributes actually changed. And then he got after he spoke with these leaders and shared with them what God had said, with the beams coming out, Moses decided, I'm going to put a veil over my face. And you might think, Moses put a veil over his face so that people would not be afraid to be in his presence, that they would feel more comfortable around him with a veil on his face. I don't know. I think that would be kind of weird, being around someone who's constantly got a veil on their face. But if you were to look at 2 Corinthians chapter 3, the Apostle Paul shares some insight on this. And he says that Moses has this veil on his face because of the diminishing glory of God on his face. Those beams that are coming out are fading. And the people of Israel know, like, wow, something happened on Sinai. The glory of God is shining from Moses' face. And so, but that diminishes over time. And so, not to discourage, he keeps this veil on his face to prevent people from seeing a fading glory of God on his face, a fading beams of God. And so, not to discourage the people. But that's how it is with the Old Testament and the Old Covenant, the Apostle Paul says. Because with this new covenant, there's no need for a veil. That's removed. Because there is nothing fading anymore because of Jesus Christ and what he did on the cross. The veil was removed, and there is no fading glory. Kind of like my tan. I like it, but I know it's going to end up fading as fall gets here, and I'm going to be white again. Same thing with the radiant face of Moses. That would fade. But the radiant glory of God will never fade with this new covenant that was made by Jesus Christ through his blood. He has redeemed the world, and he has redeemed you. And I encourage you to spend time with him. And you are going to look a lot different the more time you spend with Jesus and deep relationship with him and studying his word. God bless you, and have a great day.